Good morning, everybody. It's Bryan Caprice, and this is our Monday morning market breakdown. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. First weekend back in September. I'm sure at this point, everybody's kids are back to school. I know my kids, last week was their first week back, so by Friday they were not quite accustomed to it, and man, did they sleep good Friday night. But great weekend, great weather. I'm definitely loving these the fall vibes. I guess if you're a football fan, football started this past weekend as well. I saw lots of posts. Um, Everything's back to business. So a very exciting week last week for those of you that traded it. We talked about a number of different trading opportunities with news releases, and man, the market didn't disappoint last week. It was really a great week back in trading, and it was quite refreshing after dealing with August with man, all the slow weeks that we had in a row. So I got to say, it was really nice last week. There was definitely, at least my trading style, there was many grabs that we were able to get in there. So with that being said, guys, let's just jump into things today. Not quite as much to cover today, but I want to make sure we get out of here in time. Actually, the trade of the day has actually already happened today. It was the pound news this morning, and I'll cover that in a second. It's kind of the one advantage that the pound has is they're getting all their big moves on Monday mornings before the U.S. traders even get their coffee and kind of step into it. So for those of you that know me, I appreciate you guys coming back. For those that are new, let me just run through who I am. The reason this is important is just not kind of to brag about who I am, but it's so you understand my trading style and why and how I look at charts. It's a different style that a lot of people are not necessarily accustomed to. I keep things extremely simple. It's why the company is called Keep Trading Simple. And what I found through the years in trading, and I started my journey in trading back in 2000, right around when the tech bubble was happening is when I kind of really got super interested and got into the markets. But what I found is a lot of people use tools that they don't necessarily need, and professionals tell you that you have to use them. These create a lot of distractions. You're saying, well, this and this and this, but yeah, but if you looked at this, it counterbalances those three. So I'm primarily a price action trader. I focus on the way the candles are formed, not necessarily chart, candlestick patterns, but I focus on the way they're formed with bodies and wicks. And I'm not one of those believers of spending 16, 18 hours a day staring at computer screens. Having an entire wall of 18 displays. Like, I don't have 18 eyes. I can't look at 18 different displays. But what you can do is you can use technology and do a lot of this stuff for you, of all the things that you think you need. And that's kind of where my philosophy comes from. I've created a couple different Nadex specifics programs, the 30-minute trader program you guys may have heard of, or the 5-minute binary courses that we have. And these are all for traders with full-time jobs. And the reason why is because, again, people are busy. I'm not married to the computer all day, and that's where again, I focus on different areas and zones, and that's where you'll see a lot of when we talk about charts today. That's where it's coming from. Okay, it's the price action and using that kind of supply and demand mentality. Now, I have worked for one of the large banks in the advisory division. I really didn't enjoy that much. It didn't really have anything to do with trading or anything with helping people. So I left and ended up going back out and spending years traveling around. So I'm definitely focused. I love trading. But I also love my family a lot, and that's my primary focus these days is taking care of that little girl and, again, keeping my boys in line. Lacrosse season has started again, fall practices, so life has already started to pick up a little bit, but it's a lot of fun, and again, love doing this for everybody. So with that being said, let's go into the Nadex risk disclaimer as well. Now, trading on Nadex involves financial risk, and it may not be appropriate for all investors. The information presented here today is information and education purposes only and should not be considered an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any financial instrument on Nadex or elsewhere. Now, any trading decisions that you make are solely your responsibility. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Nadex contracts are based on underlying asset classes, including Forex, stock index futures, and commodity futures. Now, trading can be volatile and investors risk losing their investments on any given transaction. However, the design of Nadex contracts ensures investors cannot lose more than the cost at end of the transaction. Nadex is subject to U.S. regulatory oversight by the CFTC. Now, last week, this statement, I absolutely use it a lot. The fact that, you cannot lose more than enter the cost of the transaction. There was a couple times where I actually had pieces go against me, but then they reversed and ended up going in my favor. And in any other asset class, that wouldn't have happened. So again, this is one of the reasons I absolutely love Nadex without a doubt. All right. So let's go through our top 3 for the week. As you guys know, every single week on Monday morning, again, the reason we do this so early on Monday morning is not because I don't like sleep. Trust me, as a dad of 3, I love my sleep. But the reason why I wanted to do this early in the morning is to get you guys the news releases for the week before the news hits. Now, unfortunately, today the pound is a couple hours ahead. They've already beat us, and that would have been one of the top. GDP is one of my favorite releases, and unfortunately, that's already out for the day, and you guys will be able to see that in the charts. But these are the next three. It's kind of a light week. Whoops, there's the wrong thing right there. It's kind of a light week as far as news goes. Last week was pretty, chock full of news. This week, it's kind of back end loaded, and it's not as numerous as we would normally like to see. Okay, nothing we can do about that. I mean, that's going to happen every week. Is not going to have 50 news releases. That's just what happens. So this week, my top three starting on Friday is going to be retail sales / core retail sales on Friday morning at 8:30. If you've heard anything about the news recently, you know that news right now is really, really based off of the consumer. That the economy is slowing, but the consumer is what's driving the larger companies that are controlling the Dow and controlling the overall market, which is true. When people stop buying and selling, that's typically when you start to see a recession, when people get super nervous. But when people are still buying and consumers are still purchasing, that shows the true strength of the economy. So these are kind of big figures, especially the closer and closer we get to November. Again, these things start to matter, okay? Again, a lot of stuff going on with trade talks as well. And again, that's all coming into fruition as well. So it's just one of those things. Make sure you keep an eye on this one. This is definitely a big one. If you have positions on, protect yourself. Next one is going to be monetary policy for the euro. Now, Thursday is an interesting day, and I'll show you that in a second because we also have some US CPI data, which is also equally as important. But because it's kind of at the same time, I just use the euro statement because obviously the European Union, what's happening over there, that dictates a lot of things, particularly in the environment we're in right now. Mentioning things like Brexit. Brexit obviously is them leaving the euro, right? Well, when you start talking about monetary policy statements, they are probably going to mention the word Brexit. Okay, whenever you hear the word Brexit, you will typically see movement in the market. Okay, so just this is going to be at 7:45, and then literally we get coupled right behind at 8:30 with the ECB press conference and CPI data for the U.S. So Thursday morning is going to be a big one this week. Now on Wednesday, okay, and the reason why I'm choosing this one is because there's not really a whole lot else I see. There's some some core PPI data and a couple other small things. Unfortunately, my two favorite ones, my recent current favorite ones, again, happened in the pound this morning. So crude oil has been absolutely all over the place lately with the inventories, the surprises. Now we talk hurricanes. And again, whenever we start talking hurricanes or anything like that, the first thing that people look to is oil. Okay. Now we've seen inventory reports being really all over the place, drained, much higher than expected, average. I mean, it's just been crazy. So if you guys are not trading the commodities, again, that's entirely up to you and your situation. I'm not going to tell you that you have to do it. It's not for everybody. But again, Wednesday mornings, we have inventory reports this week, and you could trade Nadex. The same strategy you use for everything else, you can trade with crude oil inventories, okay, through Nadex. So for me this week, I'm going to put that one up there. Like I said, I typically stated just currencies for these presentations, but I really think the crude oil is going to be a big one this week, just because we don't have as many overall, world economic news events. Now, with that being said, let me drag Forex Factor in real quick. As you guys know, I use Forex Factor pretty often just because it does a lot of things all in one location. There are other websites I use as well that I've shown in the past, but today I'm just going to use this one. Now, you guys can see up at the top, you can see the pound and the pound yen have already had quite big days in the last 24 hours. 96, and again, that was because of this pound or this GDP and manufacturing production this morning. Only way to catch them would be to start doing presentations on Sundays, but I gotta tell you, these are great ones, and they were big misses. But again, we can start looking for retraces most likely today on both of those pairs. Okay, as these start to tick down. Looking into the week, you guys can see Monday today, and there's really not much. There's no U.S. data that's considered medium importance. There's this NAB business confidence for the Aussie tonight. I don't think that's really going to be a huge kind of market mover for the Aussie. I think it's going to be a little bit slow. Going into tomorrow, kind of the same thing, right? You can see new loans for China, but besides that, really nothing else. And that's not going to affect us whatsoever, the overall markets here. So really, we go into Wednesday before we see anything really U.S. based. Okay, Wednesday morning this is where I talked about 8:30. You have this medium risk, this PPI. Now again, PPI is an important number. I don't necessarily agree that it would be orange, but they've downgraded it now to orange because of how much it's actually moved in recent kind of news events. So it's been downgraded, but they actually have upgraded crude oil because there's been absolutely so much movement. Now I'm going to click the history on that one. Check this out. They have the forecasts have literally been,
you know, a monkey throwing a dart against the wall. They've just been all over the place. And if you look at this, you can see we've had a lot of stuff that's been good for oil, right? For the price of the dollar. I mean, they're missing. Like, if you look at August 20th, look at this. They expected a minus 2.8 million. It was minus 10. It was huge. And again, then they picked a minus 2.4, and it was a minus 4.8, double what they actually expected. So if you don't look at crude oil, again, this would be a kind of a good week to kind of check it out. And as always, again, if you're brand new to trading crude oil, there's this thing called the demo button. Go to the demo side. Go try it over there so you're not risking real capital on it. But again, apply the same strategies. If your strategy is good, it'll work no matter what chart you're looking at. So again, try it over here, okay? Try it in demo, okay? But I think this is going to be a nice mover again this week, as it's been the last couple of weeks. Now, going into Thursday, that's where I talked about this is going to be our number 2 release for the week. And for in here, this is where we're going to talk about it again, European Union, okay? The euro encompasses a very large body in the economic world, right? The euro dollar is the most traded asset in the world. Them talking about monetary policy is extremely important. Now, they're not expected to change any of the rates because they can't. I mean, it's already at 0. They're not going to pay people to borrow money, right? Them talking about a slowdown or anything like that, like we've seen numbers out of Germany and France that haven't really been the best. And basically the entire world is talking about a slowdown and, what is the effect going to be? And, could the trade war affect them as well? And a lot of talk about that. So if they start talking about a degrading environment economically over there, or, I mean, if even they come out and say that we're strong and all of a sudden the market has certainty, that's big news in the market because traders love certainty, okay? Again, followed closely behind that, we have the CPI data, right? So between this 8:45 and, the 7:45 and the 8:30 in the morning, these two pieces right here, we got a lot going on tomorrow morning, or on Thursday morning. So that is, for me as a trader, man, it is coffee early, on the charts, looking at the news, ready to go on Thursday morning. Okay, so this is a big one, right? Interesting fact about this as well is you see with the OPEC meetings, right? And it's the day after crude oil. So we'll kind of see how that kind of coincides. And then Friday, you can see Friday's not a very big day as well. Typically on Fridays, we have a combo of US/Canadian news. And this week, we only have US news in there. So again, core retail sales by itself at 8:30. And then you can see we obviously have the preliminary, University of Michigan consumer sentiment. That's what we got. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into some charts now. As I said, not a huge week for news. Now, for those of you that are new this week with us, what I will do is I'm going to run through different specific Nadex pairs and look for areas that are of interest to me, okay? Again, I'm not telling you to take any of these trades. All of these are potential trade setups for myself. If you decide that any of these are for you, they are solely your responsibility and not necessarily on me. Again, I'm a price action trader. You'll see that I don't really have a lot of indicators. I have a few tools. I got lines. I have boxes. And again, these for me are showing me areas of buying and selling and areas of what I'm potentially looking at. So also on the upper left-hand side over here, if you guys can see it, it's probably pretty small. This is actually a daily chart. And what I use is multiple time frame analysis. Then I go from the daily to the 4-hour down to the 30 minutes. Okay, now depending on how I'm trading, whether it be an intraday, overnight, I will augment these 3, but I have 3 different time frames that show me trend, entries, and refinement, okay? So right now, looking on the daily on this one, obviously we have just been in an absolute tear with this pair. Now, looking for areas of potential reversals. Now, we were kind of stuck. We were kind of consolidating. We were kind of, we had lower highs in here. We had this kind of one large spike that was kind of messing it up and then just sideways movement. 5 days now, we've been just grinding up. So areas for me that I'm looking for potential kind of turnarounds or something where I'm going to start getting super curious with this pair is going to be up in this area, okay? The reason why is you guys see this large extended range body here, this large candle. There was obviously something that really shot this back down again. And in this area, there's really not too much. And going back, you guys can see as well, is where current price is now. First time we run into a whole lot is really back up in here where we had this kind of gap to the downside. So for me, that's kind of what I'm looking for over in this 74.32 area. That's really where the first time I'd be interested in really getting into too much in this pair. We obviously have pushed up really high. Again, not so much of a, really not as much as even a small pullback on the daily. So again, could we have a potentially down day of some type of a pullback? Absolutely. But for me, I'm looking more of a longer term position, waiting until we get into a good area on this one. So not really anything that's, I love it right now.
Looking across at the little sister here over at the Aussie dollar. Now you can see the Aussie dollar has had basically the same move, okay? The dailies on this one on the downside were slightly different, right? There's a lot more wicks. There's a little bit of a basing area right here. If you guys can see it, actually, no, I'll just grab this one over. You guys can see that we have an area of basing here, okay? And again, very similar to where if we get up into this 68.95 or 68.90 area, I'm definitely starting to get interested. Now, again, there is a little bit more kind of formations here with larger wicks up top. I do like those as well. And you can see even on the 4-hour, this one really hasn't had a whole lot, but then we start at least get some reds and some pullbacks here. So a little bit healthier. I would say I'm definitely a bit more bearish, but I'm not bearish yet. Okay, it hasn't quite gotten to where I'm ready to look for start looking for a reversal. But with price grinding the way that it has, it's not quite there for me yet. Okay. And again, a lot of this is trading too. Once the U.S. traders get online today, that may give us the final burst, or on the lower time frame, we may start getting these failures to go higher. Okay. Whenever you see kind of a push and then another push that can't quite get as high, that tends to be a signal as well that, hey, listen, somebody doesn't want this to go higher. Is there a potential reversal here? Now, in this pair, again, with it being, again, on two different time frames, the larger and the intermediate, with this thing basically just going straight up in the air, I'm looking for, somewhere that it's going to, finally find some sellers to step into this one and flip it around. And again, typically, and I say typically, we need U.S. traders to come online for this to happen. Okay, the Aussie dollar currency pair will not do this without that kind of assistance. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. And again, the 30-minute candles on Monday morning are always a little bit funky, just because of again, no traders. It's obviously low volume, and it's only the at this point, it's only the European and the Asian sessions that have had their opportunity to go. So we'll see on this one when the U.S. traders step in line. But again, for me, a little bit more bearish if we can get up into this the 69 level. Let's see. Looking down at Euro Pound. Now, Euro Pound was a pair that I had a lot of fun with last week. Okay. Euro Pound had some great setups last week. Love the movement in this one. Big area that I was watching and I mentioned last week is down here. Okay, this was really the start of this last big major push up, and we ended up hitting this area, retracing back up, and then coming back down again. So I was using this one more as a target than anything else. One thing that I was looking at though was this kind of gap, right? The gap over the weekend. The gap came up and literally came right back over to where the initiation of the gap was. It was a perfect gap setup in the direction of the trend. For those of you who don't know me, I have a couple different strategies that I trade. There are news breakouts, news retracements. There's going to be a webinar this week on the parabolic retracements one of the main things that I trade. But this gap strategy is another one that I do trade over the weekends. It's something that, again, Sunday nights I can step in and look at this and trade it. This is obviously a nice kind of mover to the downside. Again, based off of that news this morning, that pound news, the GDP and the manufacturing. So at this point, this trade has already kind of happened. This is obviously pound strength driving this Euro Pound to the downside. Where we are now, though, I'm very cautious. Okay, people see this and they're like, "Oh, it's pulling back. I should get into this thing for a short now." Well, looking at the upper time frame for me, you guys can see that we had this area where it was just grinding, came down, and then it launched. This was a springboard. It finally found those buyers and launched to the top side, right? Came up and then ended up running into the daily side, a daily selling zone up top, and it's pushed back down. So we're actually sitting in it right now. So I'm always going to be a little bit cautious shorting into an area where I've seen buyers. Okay. Now, it kind of launched itself down into that area from the news today, which I love. I absolutely love. But for me at this point, now I'm looking for momentum breakouts. Okay. For those of you who don't know, a momentum breakout in my definition is there's an area of buyers or an area of sellers. Okay. It has historically shown me that those areas are there. Eventually, those buyers and seller orders are going to be eaten up. It will push through those zones. What you typically see is a retest back to it, and then it continues with momentum and continues to go and break through that power. It's kind of, I joke around with my group, I call it the Harry Potter trade, right? That kind of area has the lightning bolt that kind of slash back and forth. That's what momentum breakouts look like. They slash back into the zone and use that as the launch point to continue. So I'm starting to look for that. Most likely up in this area, looking for a break of this 88.90, look for a retest back, and then look for a short. If it doesn't break the zone, obviously the trade doesn't happen. It's an if this, then that type setup. It hasn't occurred yet. So again, being a little bit cautious, we'll see if we get any type of basing here. We'll see if it continues to
if it can't put a low in, if it doesn't make it another attempt down, we may be looking for a reversal. And again, this would be one of those parabolic retracements that I'm going to talk about on Thursday. Okay. Now looking at the euro yen. Sip of coffee. So euro yen also had a bit of a gap. Now, it did not come back and retouch its gap candle, okay? It kind of spiked up and tried to make an attempt to refill, but then just kind of petered out and is kind of stuck here. And again, you guys can see it's kind of like this, right? We were grinding on Friday, nice pullback, right? Closed just a bit down. And then what did it do? It gapped, and then literally the gap opened here, and we're just slightly below it now. So again, this one, because it is associated with the yen, we typically have to have US traders online and involved with it. Because again, the yen is basically the proxy for the overall U.S. market for the Dow, and again, it's not working. Where we gap to is a very interesting spot. So you can see we had really driven low in this pair down to 116, right? And now we're all the way back up to 118, and it happened in 2 days. Okay, we went from here all the way back up again, and then it has kind of pulled back, right? So now we're kind of stuck in a little bit of a sideways pattern. You guys can see this the pair from here from Friday is inside of the Thursday candle, obviously very low movement on Friday. We're in this level right here of a lot of basing, okay? When price tried to make an attempt up, it was smacked back down again, and then it was smacked back down again. So for me, we're kind of in a little bit of an area where I got to say I'm a little bit more bearish in this one, only with the fact that it's made attempts and it can't get through this level of basing. So when I'm looking at this, on this one, I actually don't really pay attention to wicks that much. I'm looking at a big movement down, sideways, and then a spike down, and then a spike again. So it's kind of stuck in this level right now. For me, I'm looking more bearish at this one. Whenever you see a large kind of 2 movement day like this, any type of big piece like that, I am typically looking for somewhat of a retrace. Currencies tend to revert back to what the mean was, and if this is where price was before new spikes, it tends to revert back to there. It's just when it's going to do it. Okay, so for me, I'm a bit more bearish on this pair as well. I don't have an entry on the 4-hour, and I haven't really gotten an entry that's great on the 30-minute. And again, I typically won't use my kind of reversal confirmation patterns on the 30s unless all trading sessions have occurred yet. And again, the US one is going to come online in a few hours. Okay, but I will say I am on this pair. I am actually looking at a potentially a weekly trade setup on this one. Okay, just for personal knowledge there. Going into euro dollar. So euro dollar had kind of a similar setup, right? Price shot up and then base, then stopped. Okay, now again, you guys can see on the daily, same thing. Had its impulse move, had its correction move, and then it kind of just petered out, right? And again, that's what happens on Friday. It runs out of steam, and it really hasn't done much. It's kind of stopped. We had one little pop here that kind of came up, and now we're at this section here. We've had a bit, again, this would be one of those failures to go higher, all right? Now, obviously kind of similar setup. We've had the pound being strong against this pair. We've seen the euro yen and then the euro dollar, both of them have popped and then kind of based and sideways and have not been able to kind of put that consistent pullback, to grab orders to impulse further. So we're not quite that high yet. So just be wary of that one. Again, failure to go higher situations, I'm typically looking to go short. Areas that I'd be very careful though is this is a very nice pop down here at 110.12. You guys can see this came up, pulled back, and then very large extended range candle. When I say very large, it's relative to this this time frame. There's an area, and then again, here's another one. Let me spread this out just a little bit so you guys can see it. You see it here as well. Kind of push up, nice sideways base, and very, very large candle. When you see very large candles popping, again, that's a telltale sign that there's buyers stepping in with power to drive price that fast in that short of a period of time. Okay, so those are areas, and again, those two areas for me are going to be down here at 110.13 and then the 109.92 area. If anybody's getting short, those would be potentially target areas, but also reversal areas. So just be a bit cautious with those. Looking down at pound yen. Now we know pound yen obviously is already going to have movement. There you go. It's the exact opposite of the euro pound. This is where news kicked in. Wham, straight up to the top. Now, while the euro pound is something that you would have been able to trade and get into, this one has been a little bit more difficult because it was back here in the middle of this gap range from, basically the weekend. A little bit different, okay? But with that being said, if you look over across on the daily, let's move that line. This area right here, right? You guys can see large drop down, sideways movement, large drop down. And that's where it came back up to retraced, and then it's kind of pushed higher with news. It is still technically inside of this zone. Okay, the top of this zone would be here. Okay, so we are technically, I'll just go ahead and draw it, it's easier. Okay, this is technically an area of sellers. Okay, whenever we have a large spike like this, again, that goes back to that parabolic retracement. News drove this straight up in the air. Now we're starting to see it hit in an area of sellers looking for potential retraces. And the potential retrace on this one is actually, where's my ruler? You're talking about 161 pips. Okay? That is a lot. That's many strike prices in Nadex. If you guys have never looked at this pair on the daily, it's quite a bit of retracement. Okay, that we have the potential to kind of overtake. So that's kind of where I'm looking right now, is this potential retracement through. Don't quite have the confirmation yet, although it is already starting to set up and look like that's what it's looking to do. Has hit a very small area of buyers and has pulled back, although we're starting to see some red candles. So I think when you as traders get online, again, I think that is what the catalyst is going to be for us to kind of retrace back down again. Again, there's my opinion on that one. Going over to pound dollar. Again, pound dollar we already know has the big movement as well. And looks pretty much the same, right? Pretty much the same, where we had this red candle and then obviously the spike came back. Now this one did go slightly past where the gap was. It actually drove down right where news was, right? You guys can see this is kind of one of those tricky ones. You're like, oh man, that came all the way through. If I use that as my entry, you know, what would have happened? Well, you would have got stopped out if you would have used just this as your entry. Now again, as the candles get small like this, you need to be a little bit more cautious. But again, same scenario. Extremely large push up. Right now we have a green and we have a red candle. To keep this as simple as possible, a confirmation pattern for me would be a red, green, red. It's like we're going to find out. It looks like this one is going to close green, but it is pulled back from its high. So that's a sign that it looks like we could be getting into the red, green, red, which would be the confirmation for me as well to start going short in a pair like this one. Okay. Now this retest is also 145 pips. So quite a number of strike prices that you could take advantage of in this one. Okay. Now strike prices matter whether you're going in the money or out of the money. That one is kind of again, this one is a very favorable one as well. And again, this could be a potential weekly trade for me as well. Okay, looking across at the dollar CAD. Okay, the dollar CAD, yeah, last week it kind of just started to do this, and then all of a sudden, bam, we get this kind of explosion to the downside, right? And you can see very, very large gap, almost no pullback whatsoever. You have this kind of one kind of, crazy string candle. For me, I'm looking forward to get back into this area down here where I know that we've had some base and I know that we've had some, some buying pressure down at the 130, 137. And we're about 20 pips from that area right now. We got very, very close on the top side, and this is a trade from the 3rd last week. Last Tuesday morning, we talked about this, that we are super, super close up here. We missed entry by a little bit, and what did it do? It rallied all the way back down. This was from last Tuesday, okay? It was right there, and we talked about it, and then it literally drove all the way back down, and it's going over to where our other target is. So for me on this one, I'm in a holding pattern. I'm waiting till it gets down to this lower level, and then I will be potentially looking for longs. Not quite there yet. Again, this would have been the trade of the week last week if you were able to grab entry, and again, we missed it just by a very, very tiny bit in this one, less than 10 pips on Tuesday morning. Now, there was opportunities during the week to get in as well. Those are possible. Again, it's not, but again, on Tuesday morning, we missed that little kind of move. So waiting for this go just a bit lower at this point, okay? And actually it hit one of our profit targets right here. But I'm looking for this one, 130, 137 for me. Looking at dollar Swiss. Okay, dollar Swiss, okay, it has driven right back up. So dollar Swiss actually wasn't a bad pair to trade last week. Again, we had that large spike down. It hit a level and it started to push back up again. And we closed here on Friday. Kind of wanted this to go a little bit higher, but I had it marked off as a target. So it literally has kind of made the perfect V, right? Came all the way down, all the way back up again to where price was after the news. And again, fast ascent up, fast ascent back down again, okay? It took a lot longer to grind up and it hit the same level, okay? This trade setup was, whoops, not a triangle. There's the top side, okay? So you guys can see we're starting to see this. It's starting to break down. There's 2 levels right here. If it breaks these 2 levels, the second level is, second level is there, okay? That would be my confirmation that 2 levels of buyers are broken, that again, we are valid to go to the downside, okay? So again, obviously in this pair as well, definitely bearish, looking for this to retest back down again. I don't think it'll happen as fast. Again, you guys can see this is a fast up, fast down, slow ascent. I think this will be a slow ascent back down again into this 98.60-ish area. Going across dollar yen. So dollar yen looks like a lot of the other pairs for the yen. It looks very similar to what we saw in the euro yen as well as the euro dollar. Prices popped up. Now this one bounced off of a 4-hour zone. You guys can see it in this chart right here in the intermediate. We had this marked off, and this level here was drawn off of this basing. Now people say, Brian, what basing? Well, there's an area of basing right here, okay, that occurred right there. And you guys can see we grazed the top of it here, and again, it started to push back down again. So it did happen in the gap. I do expect somewhat of a retracement, but for me in the dollar yen, I am bearish today. I'm looking for bearish setups, especially because we're bouncing off a daily level of selling, okay? The daily level of selling is very important for me. Daily and 4-hour zones are very, very important. The only thing that, obviously I would urge caution with this pair is, again, the US traders not come online, and this is purely a US based pair. So just keep that in mind. But again, we have bounced off of a daily zone, something that I was waiting for a while. It was that 107.27 or 107.22 here. And again, you guys can see that here's a smaller kind of reduction of that zone to a 107.04, and that's what we bounced off of based off your 4-hour targets, okay? So with that being said, those are the Nadex pairs for today, guys. Like I said, a lot of things that I'm bearish for, a couple things that I'm waiting. It'll be interesting to see when US traders come online. Without any really big news, the rest of today or tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if things are a little bit slow. Now, I'll be on tomorrow morning again in doing kind of a different type of a webinar on different trade setups tomorrow. That won't be based off as much kind of news for the week, but again, you guys will be able to see how things progress in one day with no news. And tomorrow we actually will have a little bit of news that we can discuss and kind of do trade setups for. So with that being said, guys, that will be it for this week as far as the presentation goes, or as far as today. I will see you guys tomorrow, same time, and again, same place. Tomorrow will be our Tuesday trade talk, so please make sure you come out. If you have any questions about anything I said today, this is how you guys can reach me. The easiest is probably the email, support@keeptradingsimple.com, but you can catch our nightly programs. You can add our Discord. It's absolutely free, or check out the website, keeptradingsimple.com. All right, so good trading today. Everybody stay safe, and I will catch you guys tomorrow morning.